Hi, this is Josh Marshall from TalkingPointsMemo.com, and this is my response to the President's State of the Union address. My first thought is, can I just jump ahead and talk about Jim Webb's Democratic response? I really thought that was the highlight of the evening, but let me do what I said I was going to do and respond to the President's speech. Before I get into the broad thematics, let me flag 2 points that I want to hear more about. The first is relatively early on in the President's discussion of Iraq and the war on terror, he rattled off a series of allegedly aborted plots that either U.S. counterterrorism officials or foreign counterterrorism officials have rolled up, have stopped in the last few years. I suspect we're going to be hearing more about these plots. In my experience, most often they turn out to be a lot less than they're initially advertised as in the President's speeches. So that's point one. The second point is the repeated references to Iran. We saw this coming up in the President's surge speech a couple weeks ago, and we see it again now. I didn't get a chance to count off every time the President mentioned Iran, but it had to be at least a half dozen references and possibly more. That's significant. Second, there was also the reference to Hezbollah and also references to Syria. I think this is an indication of where at least certain forces in the administration want to take this. This isn't just a matter of escalating the war within Baghdad on the streets and the urban warfare of Baghdad, but also taking it into Iran, taking it to Syria, Hezbollah, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think those 2 points are key to follow. More broadly about the President's speech, there's something you learn as a writer, and that is that whatever your skills may be as a stylist or a writer, if your message isn't that coherent, it's very hard to write well. And that really seemed to me to be the message of this speech. The President just did not have a coherent message. He didn't have a coherent message to bring before the American people. And because of that, even though maybe in speech writing terms it was put together well, it just seemed limp and flat to me. The President went through his litany about the war on terror and the ideological stakes, and that it's the defining battle of our time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I imagined when he was discussing this, a lot of people, a lot of viewers of this speech nodding and saying, yeah, okay, I agree with that, I agree with that, they're very bad, there are these various bad actors around the world who want to do us harm, but do we still have to stay in Iraq? Can we leave Iraq? I just felt, even though it's obviously my inclination not to see them as combined as in the way that the President does, that I think even for viewers that maybe don't have settled opinions on this issue, that there would just be this sense of disconnect. A lot of words from the President, but what we're doing in Iraq is obviously not working. It's time for us to go. So those are the basic, my basic sense of the President's speech. I think more generally too, there was a sort of a pathetic dimension to it. If you whittle down everything the President said, it really came down to, can I just have a little more time? There was the line in there about this isn't the war we entered into, or something like that, isn't the war we had entered into, but it's the one we have now. And I think you translate that, and it's basically, sure, I've screwed everything up, but now that things are so bad, we have to deal with everything I've screwed up. So that's my basic response to the President's speech. I thought it was okay in speech writing terms, but flat and not particularly strong as a speech, just because the underlying message isn't a strong one, isn't a coherent one. He's really out of good arguments to make to the American people about Iraq. Then there's Jim Webb. I think this is sort of the converse example of that lesson about the underlying coherence of a message. Have been and becoming more a Jim Webb fan. I would be shocked if we don't hear more and more talk about Webb as a potential vice presidential nominee in 2008 for all sorts of reasons. But going back to what he said today, and particularly this evening, particularly on foreign policy, the message, pretty unvarnished, pretty clear. This war was a bad idea from the beginning. It's been mismanaged terribly. The President what the president is doing right now, trying to escalate it, is clearly the wrong thing to do, not for a precipitous withdrawal, but for pulling American soldiers off the streets of Baghdad, engaging seriously in regional diplomacy, which of course is a code word for the other countries in the region, i.e. Iran, Syria, not just Jordan and Saudi Arabia, etc. And I can't remember what Senator Webb's exact words were, but a formula that quickly gets us to a withdrawal of American troops. He said it more eloquently, but the message was clear. So on both counts, I think you see that speech writing only takes you so far, and the president's message was incoherent, weak. I think Jim Webb's and by extension the Democrats' message was a strong one and a clear one. One other point I would make, and that is that Jim Webb, or Jim Webb speechwriter, had a great line in there about trusting the nation's leaders to put the right value on the lives they're putting on the line in war. Again, I'm not remembering the text exactly. Perhaps a few readers can send those lines into me. I thought they were very strong. It added to the power of Webb's remarks. So that's my response to the State of the Union. You probably won't be surprised that I wasn't overly taken with the president's speech, but now I'm looking forward to what you have to say. So post your video responses, upload them to YouTube on the State of the Union group that we've set up, and we're waiting to hear from you. Thanks.